Being a founder is the best expression or opportunity for somebody to lean into their own intuition. Designers have great intuition. It's like one of the core strengths of being a designer. I would be very surprised if we get to a point in the near term, talking about a large percentage of the rest of our careers, where being very technical doesn't matter. What I do see is the baseline being elevated. If you are completely non-technical and you do not dwell in the technical headspace at all, the baseline output that you can achieve is rising. I have learned more about coding and engineering in the past year of this company than in my entire career. Designers need to learn new tools, like every cohort of designers before them. They're better tools, lucky you. Lucky you. You're a designer now graduating into the most exciting software time in human history. Damn.
Welcome. Thanks, Jonathan Arena, for joining us today on this Designer Founder Chat. Really excited for you and I to just get into it. We've known each other for a while, but when you interview someone, you get a chance to just go into things like they normally don't go into with friends or investors. So I'm excited to have this conversation.
What a delight. For real, though, I've been looking forward to this for a while. Two designers.
Getting into it.
We're going to go deep. We're going to talk about all the things. It's going to be great.
Yeah. So first of all, your path into founding a company, I think, is not that typical, because I think usually when someone becomes like head of design, VP, once they get into that part of their career, I do think at that point it's like the type of work, the income you make from that kind of job, the life stage you're in. I don't see that many people going from 15, 20 years into design into founding a company. Can you talk a little bit about just your path here and how you got to a place where you're like, I think I want to start a company?
Yeah, I think maybe you're right. Although I would say I have a tailwind for sure. And I think a lot of people, maybe you would have asked them 2 years ago, most people would have said, yeah, no, I'm not really interested in making that switch. The opportunity cost is super high. I think the tailwind today, just to start at the 30,000 foot view, is what an incredible set of waves we see coming on the horizon. That is for I think for people, certainly for myself, who love living in the vision space, like what is going to exist? What can I make that will transform user experience or create new markets? To me, that's the most exciting frontier. And so it's not always true that it's a great time for that.
Yeah.
I would say when you started Designer Fund, what was that, 2012, 2011?
Yeah.
That was a ramp up period in tech. There was so much, there were so many new things coming online: video, mobile, scaling internationally, you name it. And I think after that, it was like build out that whole program, right? Build thousands of apps, scale those apps, copy the primitives that were successful.
Yeah.
So that was like 10 years plus. And then now I think there's a new epoch in tech where surf's up. It's like I just could not resist participating in this moment as a builder. So that's like the high level thing, like why. But you're absolutely right.
Because you could have joined one of the companies that's already kind of at the forefront of thinking through this AI wave, and
for sure. And I may, who knows? I may come to regret not doing that. That is the risk of starting a company.
Right.
I passed on. Probably had a shot at joining, a couple really interesting companies that are doing quite well.
In fact, right now I'm regretting it already.
There's always, you can always have your head on a swivel and look back and be like, oh man, wrong choice. But practically speaking, the ability or the intersection of new business models and net new interfaces is my happy place. That is like I am on a lifelong quest to continually try to position myself in that aperture. And I don't care if that means joining a big company, what exact role I have. For the most part, if you talk about big tech and people getting into like management roles and VP roles and like getting on that track and staying on that path, it's because that's what the organization asks of you. If you're a capable designer and you have a lot of experience, it's pretty natural for you to move into a leadership type role because you've done a lot of laps and you can benefit a group of people and steer that group of people towards a great outcome. But because we're all kind of resetting and the technology is all new and the heuristics are all new and the primitives are going to be new, it's almost easier now to excuse yourself and say, nobody's further ahead than I am in exploring this stuff. And so I might as well be at that efficient frontier anyway.
Is there something around autonomy for you where you're like, like if to use like the gold rush metaphor or the new frontier metaphor, it's like you could have already joined a party that was heading out west with tons of picks and shovels and land to go at. But you're like, no, I wanna go with a smaller team, go our own way. Is there like an autonomy thing that you feel like you just like, is that the thing, or is it more like a personal challenge to see if I can do this on my own, or I don't know?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it probably a little bit of both of those things.
Yeah.
I certainly resonate with the idea of, I mean, I'm a curator as a person. Like my Enneagram is a 7. That's the epicure. That's somebody who is interested in many things, likes entertaining, gets energy from people. And so my natural proclivity is to curate experiences, invite people on trips or experiences, plan them. And so I think a little bit of that energy is why, yes, I had a vision for what I wanted to build, what I thought the future could look like. And translating that to the startup world is a lot like inviting people to go on this trip with me, this journey, and work with me to figure that vision out. And so, yeah, I think that energy definitely helped me decide that this was the path and what I wanted to do. I think obviously there's one helps the other a little bit too. You have to have a plan and a clear, you have to have clarity and to convince other people to work with you and invest their time and take risk that affects them. I think the other thing is I do think of this as like a backpacking journey. I like this metaphor a lot because think about really what you're asking of yourself and the people you work with. It is when you achieve it, if you're able to summit this mountain, you will have experienced something not everybody can. So it's a unique experience, but it's going to be hard as shit.
Yeah.
You need to rely on each other. And, think about how you would build a small team. Our team's 10 people. That's like a little contingent of people trying to do a backpacking trip together. You want people who believe in the vision, who are going to be able to help you get through the tough times. And I am a bit of a masochist, I think. I like pressure, challenge. That's why I like sailing, I think, a lot too. It's like a battle between you and the environment, and you have to persevere. And the last thing I was going to say, being a founder, so that back to the autonomy question, being a founder is probably the best expression or opportunity for somebody to lean into their own intuition, which is, if you're a designer and a creative person, I think designers have great intuition. It's like one of the core strengths of being a designer. For my whole career, a tension was I have a lot of intuition, but I have to confront that intuition with like the constraints of the team or the company I'm working on and fit that underneath other people's ambition and other people's intuition. But as a founder, you are sailing your own boat in a big ocean and you can go wherever you want and put your intuition to the test.
Yeah. It's on my shoulders.
And I think that's nice. That's like a gratifying feeling. What I really didn't want is to be, Jeff Bezos, I think, is famous for saying when I'm 80 and I look back, what decisions will I regret? And for me, certainly one was I lived a life, but I didn't trust my intuition enough. I would feel sour about that.
I love that.
I think.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the plan and how that plan changed because you had a bit of a journey to get here. And I think also for me, this was one of the few journeys where we were very much along for it.
Yeah, you were.
And so tell me a little bit about that journey and just that openness to letting it go where it was going to go. Because I definitely I was like, oh, wow, this guy's really comfortable with just like following the waves, if you will, or following the current and seeing where it goes in a way that I don't know a lot of founders that would have just been okay with just going through all those like twists and turns.
The journey has been really interesting. I think obviously that's a part of the fun too. That's also a part of trusting your intuition. Is like you don't exactly know. You're not following a rigid path. That's been a theme for me, I think, for forever, really. Like there was a clear like destination maybe I wanted to get to, but I had no idea really how to piece that together step by step. Yeah. So it's always one thing after another. Design school and then business school and then different exploring different things in tech and the intersection of design and applications of design and tech, but very different, kind of a patchwork. And so I do feel like I've become comfortable code switching, and compiling together different chapters. I think it feels like a very, actually pretty logical way to feel like you're making progress and expanding and growing and learning. Because I can see like very intentionally, hey, I made this decision because I wanted to learn this and then this, and you try to stack those chips. And so I think that's how I got to the place where I was thinking about starting a company. And then to your point, I think, Designer Fund, and then you and I in particular, you guys were kind of at the base camp with me. And so the short articulation of that was not only did I feel like I had the energy to go on a very deep exploration personally and like really excavate the meaning behind my ideas. And so where we started was, talking about design education. I think we'll probably want to crack that open in a bit. But I think the root passion there is the industry changes so fast. Like if you think about the clutching mechanism between the professional lives of designers and education of designers, that they have a really hard time staying in sync. Education is much slower. Pedagogies of schools are much slower to change, but now with AI, it's like 3 years. It's like dog years.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, it's moving so fast. And so I just have always felt passionate of like trying to be somebody who can help bridge that gap, because I felt the pain when I was a student. And so we started looking at design education, fundamentally exploring how do we prepare an entire new generation of designers to work with this new medium we call AI, or like intelligent interfaces, or pixels. Like how are we going to work with pixels in the future, or create experiences, or design them, or ship them to people? Certainly will change. So I think that was like the root of my first passion. But very centered to that was the idea of what's going to happen to interfaces. I remember when you and I first started talking, we were talking about like what's the next design school going to be like. And of course, the curriculum inside that design school is surely about software. And so then I just got obsessed with, well, what is it? Yeah. Like, how do you teach the thing if you don't have like a curriculum? Exactly. Yeah. And so in like what I would call curriculum research, I remember I talked to Katie Dill, and I told her I wanted to write a book about interfaces. And Stripe Press produces incredible books, and I think she told me that Patrick and John, they're obviously design lovers, and Stripe had not produced like a design book. So they have like these, authored books by, successful people, and they're mostly text-based books. And so there wasn't one that was like, my vision for that, and the project I wanted to do was like more like a larger format, which maybe had a lot of writing in it and articulation about how interfaces evolved from physical interfaces all the way to like the mobile era, and like where it's going 5, 10, 15 years into the future. And so I just started writing that book. I think I spent 2 or 3 months in the spring of 2024 just writing those chapters. And that's when I think I really started to feel like there's a lot of work to do here, and I know I have the energy to go try to figure it out. And so that's how I started to step into what became New Generation and the startup I'm building now.
And so talking, but like, let's just in terms of like the more specific, how do you go from building a design school or design education, how do you end up with e-commerce or like AI plus e-commerce? Like articulate
I know.
those
It
few
sounds like a
steps.
stretch. No, there's like clear lily pads, like to hop from one to the other that got me there. But so maybe it was, like I said, it's like, okay, what is the future of design education and what needs to be taught? What needs to be taught? That's curriculum design. Inside curriculum design is software. So like the big tension right now in education for design is like there's not enough deep understanding of software as a material and a medium. It's still just typographic principle, graphic design, which I love, but it's just one piece now of like a much larger ecosystem. And so then you go deeper on that, and you inevitably, if you do enough research there, you inevitably bump into all these problems that need to be solved that are what the design jobs of the future are probably going to look like. Designers solve problems in systems and software, and they make experiences for people better. So I started collecting a list of those problems as I was doing that writing and that research. One of them that bubbled to the top that was personally interesting because of my background, but also very interesting from like a business perspective, was what happens to the e-commerce website. So like to get into that specificity, at first was like interfaces, web interfaces because of the open web and how AI is changing the open web, generative interfaces because we're not going to create them in the same way. And then, okay, what is a practical application for generative interfaces? It is applying that to extremely frictionful and rigid user journeys that rely on interfaces, and shopping and commerce is like one of the top three probably on the whole internet. Not to mention e-commerce websites. I like to say that those are some of the most valuable pixels on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
All the dollars flow through commerce. And so you look at like Stripe's checkout product, they process like over $1 trillion a year. I think it's like over 1% of global GDP flows through like this checkout thing that they built. So the magnitude of the opportunity, it's like an unbelievably exciting pairing of huge business outcome, enormous TAM from a startup perspective, but a beautiful application of my passion, which is, can we just make software work how we all want it to work? Like, fuck. Why do we have to deal with, everyone knows you go to a website and like this button doesn't work or something doesn't load or you can't find what you were looking for, and you're just like, you go back to 2003 with like dial-up and you're like, I can't believe I tolerated any of this. Like, that's how we're going to feel. So yeah, that's basically all the steps that connected to the thesis for the company.
Yeah, and I think like, to reflect that back to you, and I think it's interesting, I was thinking about this before we chatted, of like, basically it's like, we have to build this curriculum. Oh, I'm finding out that some of this curriculum doesn't even exist. Why doesn't it exist? And then when you realize it doesn't exist, like, it doesn't exist because there's a huge opportunity to figure it out. Yeah. And we could figure it out in an academic setting, or we could figure it out in a way that would actually create a ton of value. And then I could teach that. Once that's figured out, once I figure it out in the real world, I could teach that. And it made me reflect on, so do you remember who Bob Abel was? Like, have you ever heard that name?
I don't recall.
He was like a pioneer of 3D graphics and special effects and that sort of thing. And he taught at UCLA back in the day, but it was like he was a practitioner first, and he was figuring this stuff out in the real world. And then it's like, oh, here's what we did for Star Wars. Now I'm going to teach it to you here at school. We do have parallels here of people who basically are like, oh, I'm figuring this out in the real world because it's not figured out. And then I'm going to come back to the school and teach you the frontier of some of these technologies and approaches. And sometimes it can happen within an academic setting. But it is interesting that like you felt like, well, I have to go build the thing first, and then we can figure, because it just doesn't even exist to teach.
Yeah, and you can make an argument that you can teach a lot of this stuff today in terms of like how to approach it.
Right.
Or how to experiment with the tools. I think that's still valuable, but if I really squint at what's like the professor that I want as a student, it's somebody who's like...
They're in the trenches.
Has summited Everest a bunch of times, I want that. And so that was a motivation for me to go do the work and chop wood, carry water, right? And I like your mention of the UCLA professor. One of my inspirations is Bill Atkinson, who passed away last year, but was a close friend of Steve Jobs. And if you go look at the stuff that he invented and his career, like he's somebody who summited Everest many times. He invented like the toolbar. The toolbar in software.
Have you heard of it? You might have heard of it. The toolbar.
Photoshop or Figma. You've ever created net new pixels or net new content on the internet? Like you're using his stuff. HyperCard, obviously. And so I want to have achieved a thing. And then, really what the dream is I think the school is something I will do. I think you can hold me to that if I listen to this podcast in the future, like do it. And I want to bring a group of people together who share that passion. And it's something we talked about a lot, like who are the design Avengers that can come together. And it's like the most exceptional group of teachers imaginable. Like that's something I definitely want to do. But that's a penultimate job for me. I didn't think it was like as critical as solving the problems in front of me right now, because you can be more professorial in your like wizened years wearing like leather elbow pads and tweed jackets. Like that's kind of the vibe that I want. Not to be to like leverage something that Julie Zhu always says. She's like, imposter syndrome is real. You don't want to feel imposter syndrome as a teacher.
Right. Yeah. And it is interesting. There is, I spoke to a teacher back in the day, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. They were telling me that in design schools, one of the things they were starting to see is like by year 4, some of the really good students were starting to be good enough where it's like they were learning from them. And they were like, why are they paying $50,000 a year? They could have a job making 100. It's like the students got to a place where they were actually creating more value or enough value and good enough where it's like, should they even be the learners anymore? And so I do think like there's a bunch of teachers that kind of feel the little, it's like they have the fundamentals, they're still a teacher, but it's maybe okay.
We should do another one of these, which is like the future of design education, but
yeah.
And like what's the future design school? But I remember us talking at length about like the economic model of higher ed. And there's no doubt that that's under pressure and criticism. By some metrics, I read some stat that was like my daughter, if she were to go to Stanford in 36 or whenever she's going to go to college, it's going to be like $600,000-$700,000 a year. So I think there are other models. And then remember we explored for-profit education, which has a terrible brand reputation, maybe not the right choice. But I think pure nonprofits also not the right choice. It's kind of my hot take. Well, maybe it's not a hot take, but something in the middle feels right in the future. And that's not a new idea either. Like there are ways to do education where you are able to incentivize everybody, where you get the best practitioners in the world to be teaching. And that's just a closer connection between industry and higher ed.
Yeah.
Maybe like Bauhaus was kind of like that, or had some of that DNA where it was in a period of, pre-war, post-industrial revolution, but like there was a deeper connection between the two. And I think one of the problems right now is that there's a huge schism between higher ed and industry. Lots of schools are like that.
Yeah, or the impressionists back in the day, they taught and learned from one another, like the best of them.
Yeah, right. Or you look at like a model like what Kate Aronowitz is working on at SCAD. Like SCAD is intentionally much more connected to industry, and they care about the students' careers and the pathways of those careers.
Yeah, they don't think it's going to like corrupt them or.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool. Well, we'll get back to the education part. But so let's talk about New Gen. So tell me, maybe describe in your own words, like what is New Gen? What does it do?
New Gen is building Agentic storefronts for retail brands. We're transforming the e-commerce website. We're bringing the power of LLMs to every brand. We think every single brand is going to have their own model. It's not like a foundation model, but it is trained on their product catalog, their brand, all of that. That really looks like the posture of how a brand interfaces with customers in the future as like one note. So what does it look like today? Well, if you look at the infrastructure stack for an e-commerce company online, it's super messy. One note, one example, we're working with this big cosmetics company. They have, I think, 47 suppliers that do something on their website and in their product catalog, whether it's tagging or making widgets or pixel tracking. Think about managing a system as a brand. Like your goal is to just tell great product stories and brand stories and then sell products. But you have to manage 47 different point-wise solutions. Try to stitch them all together and like derive insights about what your customers are doing so you can try to serve them better. It is really challenging. And then from a customer perspective, websites are not smart. Keyword search on websites is completely broken. It's one of those things. We will look back and say, I can't believe we tolerated what amounts to like drinking out of breathing out of a straw to try to find a product on a big website, like a big catalog. You have to know what you're looking for. You hit like empty search results all the time. You have to click. And also think about that. Everybody knows in software, if you can reduce even one click, one step, you're saving like tons of basis points at drop off. Mm-hmm. So it's not, the primitive of the e-commerce website is very largely unchanged in the past 15, 20 years. So that's what it looks like today. Not to mention the big thing that's happening right now, which is the currency of the internet is completely changing, and it is now denominated in asking questions. So ChatGPT, 3 years old now. What's the currency of ChatGPT? It's interpreting natural language queries into answers and token use. If you presume that that is going to be the interaction methodology on the internet predominantly moving forward, it's very clear that the e-commerce website as a surface needs to adapt to that. There's a lot of value to be unlocked is sort of like where it's going. So like we talked about the problem, where it's going certainly is a human shopper being able to express themselves and ask any question they want to a brand and get shown a bespoke experience, which is a combination of great search, natural language search, the right collection of curated products for you, and then packaged in a way that is meeting the brand's expectations and great storytelling and great visual design and all of that.
And so in your makeup example, it'd be like, hey, I have this kind of skin type. Show me some products that'd be good for a night out.
Yeah, exactly. We're getting much closer to you just being able to talk to somebody in a store and say, here's what I'm looking for. I have like a shopping list. I have like 3 people I need to buy gifts for. Here's what they like. Can you just help me?
Yeah.
Just cut to the chase, right? And so that is like a whole area of innovation and like stuff we're really working on that's, I think, really exciting. And then what about agents? So there's like this new visitor to the website now. And there's these new pipes that are being built and connectivity between LLMs as like the discovery layer and e-commerce websites as like the data source, one data source. And so when agents go to a website, one of our hypotheses also is that agents have a really hard time answering questions that a customer has tasked them to go answer on an e-commerce website. Same as people. Search doesn't work. The catalog's a mess. The data's not structured in a way that's easily intelligible by the agent. Huge problem to solve. So that's sort of like what we're working on. And then very practically speaking, we just launched a new product platform. It's called Kepler. We're making essentially one product with like 2 important features. The one product, like I started mentioning in the beginning, is an agentic storefront. An agentic storefront is simply a surface that a brand can stand up that allows them to answer natural language questions for human shoppers and agent shoppers.
And does it work on their website? Or is it like how do they route traffic to either Kepler or their current store?
Yeah, so I think this is like the funny ergonomics of a new industry coming online. So if you think about where this is going to go, if Shopify had the right to build the storefront for Web 2.0, we want to be the company to pioneer the AI-powered storefront in the AI internet. And so in steady state, we will have entire brands hosting their e-commerce store on New Generation, on the Kepler product.
You won't have the old thing. There's no reason for it.
We won't have the old thing at all.
Dinosaur.
Completely new paradigm.
Yeah.
AI native, LLM
Fast.
based databases, vector search, embeddings, all that, generative front ends, all that. To get there, though, we have to do a lot of convincing. We have to do a lot of education, and we have to prove time to value in a way that's really quick and easy and it's a low lift. So as part of our go-to-market, we need to be able to convince a brand that they can do a small POC or pilot that is not a lot of engineering work. It's extremely low risk and is like pure upside demonstration. And so the way we're doing that is you can host a single AI page. This single agentic storefront is just a page. And we will work with the brand to route a small amount of traffic to that surface, both agent traffic and human traffic, small enough that the risk is very low. And then we will be able to demonstrate and attribute ROI to our surface compared to their existing surface. And then it's very obvious and easy to sell.
And so that seems to me like a no-brainer. Like if I'm a brand and someone's coming to me and saying, look at how your site works right now. It's slow, it's confused. You ask it for, what's the best TV for a family, and it returns a dishwasher. And here's this other thing where it works, and just try it on a few percent, and let's see the uptick. Yeah, I would think that brands would just be like lining out the door for a product like this. What's been the reaction from the market? Which brands are you finding like are excited? Which ones aren't? What are you seeing now that the design vision is meeting the reality of the world? What's happening?
We are, I think, one of the only companies. Well, there's many companies that are trying to help e-commerce and brands, but in our specific use case, we're on the frontier. And so it's still new, right? I think retail and e-commerce, they are a cyclical business. And so they are kind of beholden to quarterly planning cycles. Obviously, the holidays are a big deal, and they have code freezes in Q4.
Yeah, let's not mess with things.
Yeah, don't touch anything. And so I think it's just the kind of funny ergonomics of, like I said, this new technology coming online, and it is change management at the most basic level. And so I think it's probably fair to say that startups were the first early adopters and economic buyers of AI technology, and then maybe some like SaaS businesses and enterprises. And like I have a framework here. I think it's pretty clear. So like the easiest is everyone individual use case using an AI software product for a private situation, ChatGPT. If it hallucinates, if it's bad, if it's low quality, like you're like kind of annoyed with it, but it's nothing, no issues. You like move up the scale and it's like, okay, team-based or company-based stuff, but still internal. You kind of have to step into that, maybe a little bit more consequential if something doesn't work, but it's still maintained in an organization. And then like tier 3 is public facing, like you're trusting another AI service to do things on your behalf in front of customers.
Yeah. And something that touches revenue. Like if it gets it wrong, some of us are losing our jobs.
Yeah, like they have put 15 years into figuring out and like hyper optimizing these conversion funnels on their website. And so it's not a surprise that it requires education and we need to step into it. The upside is going to be huge though, because e-commerce companies, once you're in, you become part of the tech stack. Especially if there's data flywheels, you are going to be a customer forever. So there's real positive upside to doing that hard work. And we're right there at the edge. And so, yeah, we're talking to a lot of different companies. I think there's probably two camps. The great ICP for us is either an incumbent leader in a vertical who has real initiative to move quickly because they have the right visionary leaders who can see and share our vision. Oh, we have to be a first mover in AI. We're going to invest in it. We're going to experiment and demonstrate value. And that's great for us, right? And we found those companies, and we believe, and we're already seeing that they will be compounding learnings and then get ahead of competition. So like there's a real first mover advantage here. The other great ICP is a smaller company, and they're very nimble, and there's like low bureaucracy, but we call them punch-ups. So they want to use this technology to climb the ladder in their vertical. Think of like on running to Nike. Like they're already nipping at the heels of Nike.
Right.
They've made dents. This is a great tool for them. And so that's kind of how we see the customers. And it's not like everybody thinks that this is like sparkles and rainbows either. The vision is clear. I love it. I get excited. Most people have a reaction like you do, which is like, why isn't every company buying this?
As a consumer, you're just like, yeah, I want to go through this kind of front door, as opposed to like oh God, how do I compare these products? Which TV is best, which bicycle is best, and starting to just go back and forth. Because we've already felt it on ChatGPT, so you're like, oh, well, I want to do the same thing when I buy things.
Yeah, that's right. And like the counterfactual here is like, if this was such an easy thing to do, an obvious idea, then like there really wouldn't be a business opportunity for us. And so like every company, whether you see it visibly or not, has to do the hard work in some dimension. And so I think, part of my job is rejection handling and screening out customers. And, for example, some businesses they're just lower, they're like not risk takers.
Yeah.
And so they get really freaked out about generative interfaces. Oh my gosh, there's like this non-deterministic visual display in front of my customers that I haven't like approved at like 5 different levels of the organization. Yeah. I can't really experiment with that right now.
Yeah, I guess you're asking them to cede some control, and by doing that, you'll have upside. But I think it's like, yeah, maybe they, like you said, they've spent so much time controlling the experience.
The obvious thing here is, if you're a large retailer and you have scale, think about Walmart. Walmart's revenue is like 600 billion plus a year. Hundreds of millions of people visit Walmart's website. If you can demonstrate even a few basis points of conversion, that's a lot of money.
Right.
Once we have enough statistical evidence that this is a revenue driver and an operational cost saver, so profitability increaser, every single brand, it will be very, very easy to convince them that this is something that they need.
Yeah, we often talk about what companies like, how do you help me save money or make money? And this thing, and it's sometimes you have to do these roundabout things. Well, if you do this, then people are happier, and if people are happier, they don't leave the company, and if they don't leave the company, this is like, you sell more stuff, it costs you less to run it. It's just like, so, it's very direct. So if it
yeah. Do you like money?
Yeah.
You're a business. Do you like money?
Yeah, that's right. Do you like to spend it less? Do you like to make more of it? Yes. Okay, great. Let's go.
Yeah. And I think, look, like one last point here is like, even if that is, let's say we dial that up, like the obviousness of that to 100, there's like no doubt. You still have to navigate an internal organization, find a champion inside. And it is internal change management at that point. Like this is a giant shift. The ergonomics inside these brands for like how they think about controlling the business are so ingrained.
Yeah.
Which is the hard part, but it's also why the magnitude of the opportunity is so huge. Think about a company. So you listen to Cheeky Pint, John Collison's podcast.
Yeah. Occasionally, yeah.
It's really growing on me. I like listening to him a lot. So he had Satya on from Microsoft, and they spent a good 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes talking about agentic commerce. I listened to that. I was like, I feel so seen. I'm like, man, totally clear-eyed, like Stripe's angle is different than ours. Of course, they're going to do like, they need to own agentic payments, and they're going to do some infrastructure work. But this thing is happening. Like there's no doubt in my mind that this thing is the future.
Yeah. And these brands just need, it's like, are you going to do it now and have a competitive advantage, or are you going to do it later when you're basically being forced because everyone else is lapping you?
That's right.
So let's talk a little bit about how you even approach. So because you're on the frontier, I love that we keep using the metaphor of going on an expedition or whatever. I think like in that metaphor, it's like we don't even know the tools we need. We sort of know the mountain we want to climb, but we're not exactly sure which part of them, and then maybe halfway up we're like, actually this is not the mountain, it's like over there. How do you design features at NewGen given this is a new type of generative UI? Like are you just doing it in Figma now? Or like how are you actually like deciding what to build? How are you building that stuff? What does that look like? Can you give us a little bit more detail on that?
Yeah, I think this is like where I spend most of my energy, dwelling in that headspace.
Interesting.
Because it's not obvious, right? Like I definitely think the truth is like the feature roadmap, the product roadmap. There are a lot of things on there that we know are table stakes, things we just need to build to make the vision work and to make the clear opportunity that we've gotten feedback on and started to validate work. There are other things that are much more intuition based, and that requires a little bit of a different approach. Like there's not data and evidence that we have access to and like trailing indication that says this is obviously the right thing to build. But that's the efficient frontier of being at a startup. And so we have both of those. And I think as long as you are mapping them to a clear outcome you're shooting for, and you have a clear grounding that's elastic and changes with input and feedback, but a clear grounding into the way you're going to traverse up to the place you want to get to, that's sort of the way we're operating right now. And then how we're building those things, it's really interesting. I would say we use 3 surfaces. I'm kind of just thinking about this now based on your question. We still use Figma, although the way we use Figma has changed from a couple of years ago. We use it much more to get internal team alignment on the experience we want to go make. It serves as like the blueprint.
It's like a storyboard as opposed to the thing.
And then we are, I call, that there's like a new type of designer emerging, and I call that type of designer a prototype native designer. And so rather than designing static pixels and then having to do all this translation work to build them on the engineering side and the interaction side, you cut right to working with intelligent pixels that have access to our APIs. So like natural language search APIs, the generation APIs. And so you get right to prototyping in the end environment as quickly as possible. That's new. And here's the newest, and I think really, really interesting, is we are creating sandboxes and environments where we are orchestrating AI agents to go collect data and help them become a part of our design process.
When you say them, the AI agents?
The agents, yes. It's a little cosmic here, but I think about that as like a bit of a scanning electron microscope, right? We're like blasting a problem with like thousands of electrons or like tons of agents, right? Okay. And that starts to reveal like places where agents get stuck, or we can synthesize a bunch of like reasoning agents and say, how would you fix this problem? Give us suggestions. We go do a tight loop. We put a new prototype in front of the agents and we evaluate. So we are doing this like agent testing loop internally. That's really fun. It's super interesting.
Are these almost like agents as QA?
Kind of. So practically speaking, here's like one example of it. And we just launched this last week. So we have this thing called Agent Score. And Agent Score is a new industry benchmark that evaluates how effectively an e-commerce website can communicate with agents and answer questions that agents have. Effectively, how that works is we set up an environment, we take an e-commerce website, put it in that environment, and we blast agents at it with tons of questions. And then we have an agent monitor that activity and then print out an evaluation, basically a report card or a nutrition label for that brand. We haven't written any of this report. All the agents are writing their own report, and it's specific enough to say, here are the types of questions that the agents were able to answer. Here are the types of questions the agents were not able to answer, and why. What problems did they identify? So it's almost like synthetic user research. Mm-hmm. And I think it just hints at a bit of the future of designing these experiences if agentic stakeholders are going to be a thing.
And in this world, so they're coming back, they're saying, hey, here's where people got confused or we got confused or whatever. And then the designer needs to figure out, is the solution for this a UI problem, a workflow problem, a...
Kind of, yeah, that's right. Like we've identified maybe, I would say a handful, maybe up to 10 pretty common failure modes for e-commerce websites today that trip up both human shoppers and agentic shoppers, so any agent. And so we can deterministically share that feedback with the brand and say, this is where your website's unprepared. Literally, here are the questions it couldn't answer. And so there's a direct way for us to practically say, you're leaving money on the table. If customers are asking these questions, which, they know the list of most important questions and the most important shoppers and the most valuable products that they have. So it's very easy to infer kind of the opportunity cost there.
Interesting. And just so I understand, when you talk about a prototyping native designer, I'm assuming they have to be quite technical.
Pretty technical, yeah. I mean, our founding designer, Nick, is quite technical. And I think what's really nice is historically we've all had to, or at least the way design orgs and product orgs had been built.
Yeah.
There was this natural partition between engineering, back-end engineering, front-end engineering, visual design, interaction design, all that. And that's more of an artifact of how large companies needed to build a workforce at scale than it really is about how to make a thing. Mm-hmm. And so we've seen a lot of gains in terms of speed and quality and communication internally because we have people who don't know that there's a partition there. They don't care about that partition. And so Nick is talking with the engineering team half the day, putting up a bunch of PRs, designing visual design things in Figma, and then making prototypes with vibe coding tools. And it's like this liquid, we're all just product builders now, which is so nice. It's honestly the most fun I've ever had working because I don't need to think about that shit. It's such a drag as a creative person or someone with intuition or ideas. You're like, oh, well, that's not my job. I can't go there. It's going to piss somebody off. We don't need to think about that anymore.
I mean, you hear people saying engineers don't even need to learn to code anymore, let alone designers, because these things will just code for you. And yet, I keep talking to design leaders who say just how much more effective designers who can code are in this age. Do you think it's bullshit that designers won't need to code now or in the future? Or is it just going to be if you're somewhat technical or even quite technical, you'll always have an edge, at least for the short to medium term, over folks that don't?
I would be very surprised if we get to a point in the near term, talking about a large percentage of the rest of our careers near term, where being very technical doesn't matter. Yeah. I just can't see that. I could be wrong, but I just don't see that. What I do see is the baseline being elevated. So what I mean by that is if you are completely non-technical and you do not dwell in the technical headspace at all, the baseline output that you can achieve is rising, which is great for a lot of use cases, but it does not address anything on the aspect of pushing new boundaries, pioneering, pushing the technology at its outer limit. Those are technical people, and they are the ones who are widening the gamut of opportunity for everybody else. So that's where we want to be, not in the center where that is not consequential.
Yeah. And I think for any aspiring designer or even someone who's hey, I'm sort of middle career, I'm a little scared, I don't know, it's you cannot go wrong by starting to use these tools and using these tools as a platform for learning how to code better, and just leveling up that way. These tools are probably some of the best tools to learn to code.
Oh, absolutely. I have learned more about coding and engineering in the past year of this company than in my entire career.
That's the tweet.
That's a real fact. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
And it's not even because I have the tools that help me. And obviously the teammates that help me. So I'm working with this small team of technical people every day, which is amazing. But you are forced to confront the technical frontier if you want to fully understand what the heck you're building. You could not care and just delegate that to the AI, but then when there's a problem, you have no idea how to solve it, which is extremely dangerous. And so you're almost forced to learn. It's almost like forced learning, but fun forced learning.
Yeah.
So it's great.
It makes me think too. It's like the veneer of the things that we design now is so much more fluid, from a UI layer to like a component layer to a full like experience layer. And because of that, it's like you can't have the things not be smart or intelligent, and the people who then design those things need to also understand how. It's almost like the way cars used to be very mechanical, used to be able to fix it really easily. Now it's like, you hear from car mechanics, you got to be a fucking computer engineer to fix a car these days. It's like, yeah, because there are computers inside, and some of the newer cars are even more so, right? They have fewer moving mechanical parts, but a whole lot of computer parts.
Yeah. So I think like one other way I would describe this, which should make aspiring designers feel great, is the biggest problems to solve and the most rewarding problems to solve actually are solving the problems that exist between the gaps, like the edges of all these technologies. So like even still today, this whole ecosystem is being built. So LLMs and foundation models and the interfaces by which we're going to be interacting with them, and the data and the memory and the applications that are built, and the way data is passed back and forth between businesses and going on data pipes. Like there's intersections and gaps still between all of that stuff. We are now able to spend a lot more time filling in those gaps and making the experiences seamless, which is the ultimate design work. That's the most gratifying design work, to make like a really seamless experience without having to spend a huge portion of our time doing the wood chopping.
Yeah. And the wood chopping here is like, it's just like how much time I spent just like chopping up images and the PNGs and the like figuring it, it's like all the like making it work on i6. Yeah, the 9 slice, making it work on i6 and all that stuff. It's like you figured out what you want to do, and then there was so much execution work. Whereas now a lot of it could be in the what do we want to build, and the actual like execution of it. You think it's
the same. It's just history repeating. It's the same exact thing. Like early graphic design, people like cutting up film. You know what I mean? And like positioning stuff under like on a light table, and then they're taking a photo of it, and like that's how you made a movie poster. It's like that's the same thing. You could probably ask people when, in the Industrial Revolution, they're like, oh my gosh, the machines are, I think it's very similar vibes. Of course, nobody knows. I'm not qualified to talk about like super intelligence, but I think there's a natural boundary and like safety net that humanity and society has built in that won't allow us to take that technology into a place that everybody just hates. Like nobody's going to tolerate that. Oh, like as a society, we're like, this is shitty. We're going to turn it off. I just don't see it. Yeah. So I'm an optimist, as you can tell.
Yeah, I agree with you too. Like, I don't know what the vision that some people have of the like, AGI kind of taking over, but it's like ultimately like humans are the consumers of the experience. We have physical spaces, and we want the things to serve us, right? We want.
Yeah. These are computers. They're not entities that have. They're just computers. Like it's a tool. It's all the tool. Designers need to learn new tools. Like every cohort of designers before them. They're better tools. Lucky you. That's how I feel. Like lucky you. You're a designer now, graduating into the most exciting software time in human history. Damn.
And the tools are available. The tools are cheap. It's like the stuff that we couldn't even, Photoshop when we were coming up. You can buy it was $1,200 or $1,500, just for like, and then Illustrator was another $900. It's like, no student can afford that. You have to, right? It's like, now it's like, oh yeah, here you go. Here's like a tool that's 1,000 times more powerful than Photoshop, like in your browser.
Also, if you have aesthetic sensibility, I feel like that's an incremental value that like always floats on top of all the stuff. And so all of the LLM technology, all the image gen and video gen models, like it's all trained on generally the same data. And so again, the gamut of like the quality there has it upper bounds. And then if you are creative and you have sensibility and insight, you're definitely always going to be able to do things that appeal to people and customers because it's going to feel different. And actually, maybe a really generous look at that is a reversion and an increased appreciation for the handmade. I think we will revel in our own ability to make stuff when a larger and larger percentage of our lives are spent existing in a generated world with generated media and synthetic everything. Like, we still are biological creatures and have eyeballs and sense of hearing and touch, and so I don't think that's ever going to go away.
Yeah.
So designers, you have so much.
This thing? So this is a poster, but this is the back of the post to the front. It basically is letter forms that were created from paper clips, and you look at it, you're like, oh, maybe like an AI thing could have done that. But the thing that's so beautiful is that Ben basically painstakingly, this has been Berry, yeah, he painstakingly like placed every paper clip. And the funny thing is, so the front is the poster, but the thing I have is the process, which is on the back. Yeah. But that's what I hang up, because that to me is the most, that's the thing that's like the most incredible, is like the amount of work it took. This is what the thing looks like. Right. So I think you're right. Like, we're going to get, that's going to be dialed up to an 11. And then in totally, Jonathan, in the last, you mentioned Cheeky Pint as like a podcast that you're starting to really enjoy. Are there other like books, videos, things that are kind of that you're reading, or some sort of media that has shaped your thinking recently as you're building New Gen?
Yeah, for sure. I find myself like reaching back for older books actually a lot. Adam, my co-founder, is a big book nerd and shares a lot of books with me too. I would say, so Designing Design, a classic design book by Kenya Hara. I read it again. I've read that book so many times, but I read it again because there's so much wisdom in there around, forget AI, right? Forget the technology. If you just focus on the experience you're trying to build for somebody, that's where he is like exceptional.
Yeah. And
he describes how to create delight, like pure delight for people, in terms of from their POV and their experience. And so that's given me a lot of inspiration again, as I think about how to apply that mindset to building with AI. And then, of course, there's like practical stuff, like shout out to Lenny, I guess. I just think his content game is so fucking strong. I don't
know how people find the time to read and listen to that. Like, it's just so dense and good. Your whole job could just be your whole job could just be that, just listening to Lenny's stuff and somehow synthesizing it to your team. That could be a full-time employee's full job.
I can't listen to it all, so I do it selectively, and I do it on my commute. So I have
That's good.
It's like my favorite time of day, actually. I have like
learning
podcast time. Yeah. And like, so he has a lot of like go-to-market leaders and sales leaders. And so, I am not an expert in either of those domains, but it's something I had to learn and have to like upskill myself as a founder. And so that's been really an exceptional source of advice and guidance for me.
Thanks, Lenny.
Yep. +1.
Awesome. All right. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for sharing wisdom, your journey, where you think this is all going. I'm going to definitely follow up with you about a second part all around design education.
Yeah, we should do it. We should get like some people together and stitch together like a vision of the future of design education with, I know there's a lot of folks we know who are thinking about that.
Yeah, the time has come. All right. Thank you so much, and appreciate the time.
It's always fun to hang, Ben. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it as well.